Charting your own course. Building your future. How much does a person's individual choices affect his or her fate? Crowded around TVs, Americans watch and hold their breath. The countdown begins. Ignition. Blast off. And Apollo 11 is headed to the moon. President Kennedy made it our mission. What happens when the impossible becomes reality? College quads, dorm rooms, fraternities, and football games. A four-year college is great for some. But for students interested in a different kind of future, community and technical colleges provide a better path. How can we make sure that we make the right choices? A new job, a new office, a big raise. It sounds great, but what happens when we feel like we don't deserve our dream? Imposter syndrome is a reality, and for some, it can be crippling. How can we overcome our fears? How can we transform the future?
What is imposter syndrome? Do you ever sit in class and say to yourself, I'm not smart enough to be here? Do you ever feel like your accomplishments are mere luck, or that you simply do not deserve them? Do you back down from challenges because you fear being evaluated? If you answered yes to any of these questions, it is likely that you have imposter syndrome. Now, you might be thinking, what is imposter syndrome? Well, imposter syndrome, first described in a 1978 academic paper by Dr. Pauline Clance and her colleague, Dr. Suzanne Imes, is characterized by intense feelings that make you believe that you are inadequate or a fraud, even if your accomplishments prove otherwise. Essentially, people with imposter syndrome do not internalize their success. Imposter syndrome goes by numerous names: imposter phenomenon, imposterism, imposter feelings, imposter experiences, imposter fears, and perceived fraudulence. Though there are slight distinctions to these constructs, the common element is having the internal experience of incompetence and fraudulence, specifically related to achievement situations like school and the workplace. In sum, based on a 2011 article in the International Journal of Behavioral Science that reviewed the definitions and characteristics of imposterism, people with imposter syndrome feel like a fraud and believe that others think more favorably of their successes and achievements than they do, fear that other people will discover that they are a fraud and believe that they are a failure just as they believe themselves to be, have difficulty internalizing their successes, and as a result, attribute their achievements to external factors. What imposter syndrome is not: people generally assume that imposter syndrome is a mental health disorder because of the use of the word syndrome. However, it is not a mental illness. In fact, imposter syndrome is not listed in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is the main authority on psychiatric diagnosis published by the American Psychiatric Association. However, imposter syndrome can interfere with your psychological well-being and lead to depression and low self-esteem. Some people with imposter syndrome might also engage in maladaptive behaviors that get in the way of a person's ability to function well in everyday activities, such as procrastination or overworking. Who struggles with imposter feelings? When imposter syndrome was first studied in 1978, researchers, Drs. Clance and Imes, believed that it was a phenomenon that only high-achieving women experienced. However, over the years, numerous studies have found that both men and women and people across different cultures and occupations admit to feeling like an imposter at some point in their lives. Essentially, as discussed in a 1981 academic paper by Dr. Harvey, anyone can identify as an imposter as long as they fail to internalize their success. Dr. Harvey also found that imposter syndrome is not limited to highly successful people. In fact, if you struggle with imposter experiences, you are not alone. According to a 1985 paper by Dr. Gail Matthew and Dr. Clance, about 70% of the sample expressed having imposter feelings at some point in their lives. In addition, notable, successful people have admitted to experiencing imposterism, including author Maya Angelou, technology leader Sheryl Sandberg, and actor Tom Hanks. Though diverse groups of people have struggled with imposterism, people from marginalized backgrounds tend to experience it more. This can be a result of discrimination, stereotype threat, or microaggressions that potentially lead marginalized groups to internalize feelings of fraudulence and not belonging. What emotions are common for people who have imposter syndrome? Two emotions that people with imposter syndrome commonly feel are anxiety and fear. When people feel anxious, they feel uncertain about the future. Anxiety can manifest in tension in the body, an increased heartbeat, an inability to stay still and focused, and hurried speech. People with imposter syndrome experience anxiety because they are not sure what will happen when and if someone finds out that they are a fraud. On the other hand, when people are fearful, they feel there is impending danger. Fear can result in tense bodies, sweaty palms, an increased heartbeat, and wide eyes. People who suffer from imposterism might be fearful about what will happen if they fail or are evaluated poorly. Will they get kicked out of a program or class? Will they be bullied? Will they be embarrassed in front of others? People with imposter syndrome also tend to experience self-doubt, shame, and frustration. What can we do to overcome our imposter feelings? 1. Talk to others. When you share your imposter experience with others, you realize you are not the only one struggling through it. Learning that you are not alone and that other people experience self-doubt as well as imposter feelings can be liberating. In the process of sharing imposter experiences with others, you build community and a safe space. You also begin to believe your successes and achievements are well deserved. How to begin? With friends that you trust, start a conversation where you share your own experiences of feelings like a fraud and imposter, and invite others to share theirs. Then, together with your friends, discuss what strategies others have used to tackle their challenges, and come up with a way to support each other. 2. Engage in positive self-talk. People with imposter syndrome generally engage in negative self-talk, the mean and discouraging comments they say to themselves. Some examples of negative self-talk include, I'm not smart enough to get into my first choice college, or they only accepted me because they felt bad for me. To begin to confront imposter experiences, people need to be kinder to themselves by engaging in positive self-talk, which involves saying encouraging and uplifting statements to yourself. Some examples of positive self-talk include, you worked hard and you earned your accomplishments, and you are smart enough to be in this class. By engaging in positive self-talk, you unlock optimism and self-confidence. How to begin? Make a list of negative comments that you say to yourself often. Then, next to each negative comment, write a positive message to yourself instead. Afterwards, devise a plan to interrupt your negative self-talk with positive self-talk. 3. Build an emotion management strategy toolbox. People who have imposter syndrome tend to feel anxious, frustrated, ashamed, and fearful. These emotions feel unpleasant and can distract people from achieving their goals. That's why it is important to develop strategies to manage emotions, especially the uncomfortable emotions that come with imposterism. To manage emotions effectively, it is important to have a toolbox of strategies from which you can choose. Emotion management strategies include 1. Action strategies. These are ways you use your body to regulate emotions, like seeking social support, going for a run, or taking a deep breath. 2. Thought strategies. There are ways you use your mind to regulate emotions, like visualizing a successful outcome or reframing everything you do as a learning experience. How to begin? Write a list of thought and action strategies that you already use to manage uncomfortable emotions. Put an asterisk next to those strategies that you can employ whenever you are beginning to feel like an imposter in any situation or environment. 4. Leverage your strengths to tackle the areas where you feel like an imposter. Undoubtedly, you are great at something. To begin to confront your imposter feelings, it is helpful to think about your strengths as a way to build the confidence needed to tackle those areas that make you feel like an imposter. How to begin? Make a list of all your strengths. Then, next to each strength, write down what steps you took to get good at that specific skill or activity. Afterwards, write a list of the goals you want to accomplish with an action plan, leveraging some of the steps you took to develop your strengths. 5. Be self-compassionate. Clients found that people who experience imposter syndrome tend to aim for perfectionism. As such, when things do not go as planned, people who struggle with imposterism feel overwhelmed or disappointed and tend to generalize their inability to meet their perfectionist goals as evidence that they are a failure. Instead of focusing on being perfect, it is helpful to remind yourself that everyone is entitled to make mistakes, even you. And when you do well, do something amazing for yourself. How to begin? When working on an assignment or another task, evaluate your goals by asking yourself the following questions. Can I accomplish this by the deadline if there is a deadline? If you cannot, consider making changes to have a more realistic goal. Will I enjoy myself while doing this task, or am I just doing it to stand out among my peers? If you are not enjoying yourself, it is best you consider coming up with a goal that both challenges you accordingly and brings you joy. Do I have the resources to complete the task at hand? If you do not have the resources, either create a plan to attain them or consider another task that you can complete with the resources that you have. These are just some of the ways that you can begin to confront your inner imposter. You might find your own ways to manage your imposter syndrome, but whatever you do, the goal is to develop strategies to promote your personal growth, enhance your well-being, build positive relationships, and contribute to your desired goals. The imposter phenomenon in high-achieving women, dynamics and therapeutic intervention. Pauline Rose Clance and Suzanne Imes. Georgia State University, University Plaza, Atlanta, Georgia, 30303. Abstract. The term imposter phenomenon is used to designate an internal experience of intellectual phonies, which appears to be particularly prevalent and intense among a select sample of high-achieving women. Certain early family dynamics and later introjection of societal sex role stereotyping appear to contribute significantly to the development of the imposter phenomenon. Despite outstanding academic and professional accomplishments, women who experience the imposter phenomenon persist in believing that they are really not bright and have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. Numerous achievements, which one might expect to provide ample object evidence of superior intellectual functioning, do not appear to affect the imposter belief. 4 factors, which contribute to the maintenance of imposter feelings over time, are explored. Therapeutic approaches found to be effective in helping women change the imposter self-concept are described. In the past 5 years, we have worked in individual psychotherapy, theme-centered international groups, and college classes with over 150 highly successful women. Women who have earned PhDs in various specialties, who are respected professionals in their fields, or who are students recognized for their academic excellence. However, despite their earned degrees, scholastic honors, high achievement on standardized tests, praise and professional recognition from colleges and respected authorities, these women do not experience an internal sense of success. They consider themselves to be imposters. Women who experience the imposter phenomenon maintain a strong belief that they are not intelligent, In fact, they are convinced that they have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. For example, students often fantasize that they were mistakenly admitted to graduate school because of an error by the admissions committee. Numerous women, graduate students, state that their high examination scores are due to luck, to misgrading, or to the faulty judgment of professors. Women professionals in our sample feel over-evaluated by colleagues and administrators. One woman professor said, "I'm not good enough to be on the faculty here." Some mistake was made in the selection process. Another, the chairperson of her department, said, "Obviously, I'm in this position because my abilities have been overestimated." Another woman with 2 master's degrees, a PhD, and numerous publications to her credit considered herself unqualified to teach remedial college classes in her field. In other words, these women find innumerable means of negating any external evidence that contradicts their belief that they are, in reality, unintelligent. Self-declared imposters fear that eventually some significant person will discover that they are indeed intellectual imposters. One woman stated, "I was convinced that I would be discovered as a phony when I took my comprehensive doctoral examination. I thought the final test had come. In one way, I was somewhat relieved at this prospect because the pretense would finally be over. I was shocked when my chairman told me that my answers were excellent and that my paper was one of the best he had seen in his entire career." Women who exhibit the imposter phenomenon do not fall into any one diagnostic category. The clinical symptoms most frequently reported are generalized anxiety, lack of self-confidence, depression, and frustration related to inability to meet self-imposed standards of achievement. Included in our sample have been 95 undergraduate women and 10 PhD faculty women at a small, academically acclaimed, private Midwestern coeducational college, 15 undergraduates, 20 graduate students, and 10 faculty members at a large southern urban university, 6 medical students from northern and southern universities, and 22 professional women in such fields as law, anthropology, nursing, counseling, religious education, social work, occupational therapy, and teaching. They were primarily white middle to upper class women between the ages of 20 and 45. Approximately 1/3 were therapy clients with specific presenting problems. The other 2/3 were in growth-oriented interaction groups or classes taught by the authors. While our focus has been on understanding the more personal, experiential effects of the imposter feelings, we find confirmation of our observations in the experimental findings of attribution theorists, who in recent years have begun to study differential attribution of success by men and women. In her review of the research on sex differences in the attribution process, Doe points to considerable evidence that women consistently have lower expectancies than men of their ability to perform successfully on a wide variety of tasks. The findings of the research cited by Doe are consistent with the following principles. 1. An unexpected performance outcome will be attributed to a temporary cause. 2. An expected performance outcome will be attributed to a stable cause. In line with their lower expectancies, women tend to attribute their successes to temporary causes, such as luck or effort, in contrast to men who are much more likely to attribute their successes to the internal, stable factor of ability. Conversely, women tend to explain failure with lack of ability, whereas men more often attribute failure to luck or task difficulty. Given the lower expectancies women have for their own performances, they have apparently internalized into a self-stereotype, the societal sex role stereotype that they are not considered competent. Since success for women is contraindicated by societal expectations and their own internalized self-evaluations, it is not surprising that women in our sample need to find explanation for their accomplishments other than their own intelligence, such as fooling other people. Thus, unlike men who tend to own success as attributable to a quality inherent in themselves, Women are more likely either to project the cause of success outward to an external cause or to a temporary internal quality that they do not equate with inherent ability. Doe suggests that if an unexpected event is attributed to some temporary factor, then future expectancies may remain unchanged, producing a self-perpetuating cycle. She further proposes, however, that repeated success experiences over a period of time should begin to change one's expectancies. We have been amazed at the self-perpetuating nature of the imposter phenomenon. With the pervasiveness and longevity of the imposter feelings of our higher-achieving women, with their continual discounting of their own abilities and persistent fear of failure, we have not found repeated successes alone sufficient to break the cycle.